Therefore, we should A. Consider failure in the service delivery process as part of the system, and B. Look to build in processes that recover from inevitable failure, rather than assuming we'll get it right every time and then operating in denial of the potential for service failure. And service failure happens because of the variability of services. We've got the participation of the customer as the co-producer and the simultaneous nature of service production and consumption, as we've discussed. So despite good planning, as service blueprints would show us that good planning does exist, service failures cannot be prevented. You see on the slide, service failure is inevitable, so we have to anticipate that service will occur and build in measures to recover from it. So what kind of measures do we build in? Well, if we have a system process failure, in these cases a link between the process of delivery and the staff delivering the service somehow breaks down. It could be a maintenance issue like a ride at a theme park being closed, or a key facility needing to be temporarily shut down, like say a swimming pool at a leisure centre. System or process failures are about critical failures in the fundamental delivery of the service. It could be longer queues at the airport or your food being undercooked in a restaurant, but these demonstrate that the system somehow isn't working the way it's meant to. Then we have response failures. These are when the customer has engaged in the service process and has either explicitly or implicitly asked something specifically of the service provider. For example, making a request for a higher floor in a hotel to avoid traffic noise, or a lower floor to avoid having to use the elevator. These are examples of explicit requests. Implicit requests can be difficult to navigate and may involve the behaviour of other customers, like the quiet carriage of a train having children. Some people may consider children to be inherently noisy and therefore would not expect children to be allowed in the quiet carriage. Thus they might complain if children are present. There are also failures in the way a service can deal with emergent requests from a customer, such as when we forget our passwords for our banking or our PIN. Although that is technically our fault, the service must have the capacity to support us if we run into difficulty and signpost us towards a resolution. So some of the requests we make as customers are also passive requests through our behaviour rather than active requests based on our wants or expectations. Finally, we have relationship or human failures. This is where the service fails based on the behaviour of employees. These can be unexpected or non-standard behaviours from staff members that are not conforming to service delivery standard operating procedures. Or they might just lack sincerity, empathy, or a basic understanding of the situation. When these failures occur, that is when service recovery kicks into action. So service recovery is concerned with an organization's systematic attempt to correct a problem following service failure. And that is aimed at retaining the customer's goodwill. And they need to do that by acting quickly, demonstrating empathy with the customer's perception of the failure. Remember, we've talked about perceptions before. And enabling employees to instigate corrective actions and award appropriate compensation. Well-managed organizations are able to overcome service failure and develop positive reputations despite the fact failure has taken place. And we'll talk more about service recovery processes in class, but needless to say that when we've accepted that failure is inevitable, organizations that allocate a reasonable amount of resources towards understanding and proactively dealing with service recovery tend to do well. So if we return to our model, we've got the center of the original diagram, which contains the service experience between service delivery and perceived service, and that results in one of two things: satisfaction or dissatisfaction. If we're discussing dissatisfaction, then that means that some form of service failure has occurred. and satisfaction is currently not something the organization is able to achieve because they have found themselves in the dissatisfaction zone. And therefore, they need to introduce a form of service recovery to try and get them out of the dissatisfaction zone. And that usually means a rework, some reworking of the normal processes that are delivered in order to try and move back from the failure. So that rework, represented by service recovery, can move the customer from that point of dissatisfaction through service recovery into the satisfaction zone where they are now happy. And we will talk about this in class as well. There is a phenomenon known as the service recovery paradox, which is where by going through the process that you see on the screen here, some customers actually end up more satisfied than they ever could have been had they been satisfied originally. So by being dissatisfied, experiencing the service recovery rework, and then achieving satisfaction, that level of satisfaction is actually higher. And that's known as the service recovery paradox. And you may have experienced something like that yourself in a restaurant or on holiday where something went wrong and the lengths the organization went to in order to recover from it actually created an experience in its own right that you remember and you want to share. In summary, in this section we've looked at how service quality can be mapped onto a service blueprint. We've seen that service systems have multiple inputs and multiple outcomes. We've conceived of service failure as an inevitable part of the service delivery system. We've seen how service failure can be system-based, response-based, or personnel-based. We've looked at service recovery and how it is designed to retain customer goodwill. And we've seen that service recovery can achieve or even improve customer satisfaction. That is the services marketing topic complete. You've now watched all the content relating to this topic. Please now refer to the course reading for further learning materials.